Hello, and how are you doing? My name is Olamide, and thank you for joining another episode on this series of navigating life as a teenager. I hope you've enjoyed all the episodes so far, starting with the first episode of the season, healthy masculinity. Last episode was on maturing puberty in young boys. And I hope they are helping shape your perspective as a teenager. I hope they are serving as a guide in terms of having this conversation with teenagers if you're an older person. And I hope they're just giving you perspective and insights into the life and things that teenagers, even if you're a lady, a teenage boy would go through. Right? And I promise that this week we're going to talk about vices you should be aware of as a teenager. And like I explained, I think in the first episode, that this is the season of your life where you've been entrusted with a level of freedom. The season or the phase you went through before now was one where you would always have a guardian around. Maybe your parents are always within close proximity. But at this age, ideally, you're probably in the university or maybe in a boarding school if you're still in secondary school. So for me, at the time when I was going through puberty, I think that was when I was in secondary school, boarding school. So whatever that is for you, I'm sure that at the time when you're going through this season, as a teenager, you've earned some freedom. You've earned the trust of your parents, whether they want to or they just don't have a choice, to just have to trust that you would be a good boy. So it's a very interesting season where you're going through life alone. That will be your first stage of going through life alone. And I know you want to believe that you're already becoming an adult, and maybe you feel like, oh, life is a lot. Newsflash, you're just starting. But that's not the point I'm going to. So, life as a teenager, navigating this season of your life comes with a lot of excitement. You have a lot of strength. You are in that season where you could play football all day. You just need to crash, and by the next morning, you are up again. You are in that season of your life where you can bend and you're not worried about the back pain like a 30-year-old man. So it comes with a lot of excitement. It's a season of your life where maybe you sharpen those skills, where you have opportunity to try your hands on a lot of things. Like, so even from an education point of view, you've not made the decision on whether you want to go to the arts or you want to be in the science class or you want to be in the commercial. So it has a lot of flavor. It has a lot of interesting dynamics. But another thing again is that because admiration is part of this season, you want to be admired. A lot of times in this season of your life, there is the tendency to be attracted to things that look different. I know this because I've been a teenager. It is at this phase of life, coupled with the fact that you're enjoying liberty, you're enjoying freedom, that you want to engage in conversations. You want to hear out perspectives that are ideally not what you're used to. So you would find out that you're attracted to certain way of life that is different from your background. I experienced this. We all went through this when we were in school. You'd realize that, for example, children who were raised in a Christian way, suddenly when they get to school, there are different people. What's changed? It's just that excitement. Some persons get carried away and get themselves involved in things that are destructive. And that's why today I want to talk about vices. And so that's where I was leading to talk about vices, things you should be aware of. Like I said, the season comes with a lot of flavor. And I don't want to be that older person that is trying to limit your experiences out of life. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm not here to tell you what to do or what not to do. But at the same time, I believe older people have a responsibility to lead the younger ones, to share insight, to let them know things they should be aware of. And that's why we're having these conversations. So I've broken them down into three vices, or I think four of them: appearance, substance, financial, and sexual. So I'm just going to run through them quickly. Appearance abuse. That's how I want to describe it. How is this a vice, you would say? Because when we talk about vices, we're talking about harmful habits, right? But how can appearance be a vice? And this would probably be on the light, or be on a lighter note. It could be because admiration is an important part of this season. So you are all about how you look. When people see you, how are they drawn to you? So in this season of your life, you might find out that you are drawn to things like tattoos, right? You might find out that you're drawn to dressing in a certain way, so that people can think you're cool or otherwise. So you need to be aware of that. And I would say I have nothing against tattoo, but I would say that in this season of your life is a season where you don't want to be making permanent, you don't want to be living with permanent consequences of decisions you made of temporary situations. You don't want to be living with permanent consequences of decisions you made of temporary situation. So what would that look like? For example, say, because you're drawn to tattoo, and that was when at this stage of your life you feel like you have a lot of liberty, and then you drill something on your arm that is permanent, and 10 years down the line you find out that, oh, that was a very stupid decision. Take, for example, maybe you drew your girlfriend as a teenager, you drew her face on your arm. Guess what? That, although tattoos can be removed now, it's a very painful process. So now imagine yourself 10 years from now, you are now 30 or you're 25, and you're about to get married, and your wife to be has to live with you with the picture of a girl that you claimed to be in love with when you were 18, just because you were excited about tattoo. Or because you now have freedom and you want to get a tattoo, you drew tattoos all over your body just because that was what was exciting you at the time. And now you're about to get into a profession of your dream, and only for you to realize that you can't get in just because you have a tattoo. This is living with permanent consequences of decisions you made out of temporary situations. So these are things to be aware of. Or in terms of how you look, you just dress rough because you think there's some sort of flavor, there's some sort of vibe in terms of, so you need to be careful of that. So like I said, this is a bit light. This can be very cultural. People can have different perspectives to this, and how it works with you, how it works for you. Just make intelligent decisions, right? So I'm going to go to the next one. Substance abuse. This can be alcohol or can be any type of drug. This is a no. You see, unlike the first one, which I call appearance abuse, right? That one, it depends. Let everybody do what works for them, right? But when it comes to substance, to use of drugs, taking of alcohol, I strongly believe it is a no for a teenager. I know there are parts of the world where one of the things you look out for as a teenager is when you finally take your first sip of alcohol. And maybe I should split it into two: alcohol and then drug abuse. Alcohol, yeah, people would argue that there is a reasonable way to take alcohol, that there is a reasonable intake. But I'm just of the opinion that it's a very fine line that a teenager who is still trying to get to know themselves can easily cross. And if you cross that fine line, you are now a drunkard. And what you should know is that when you abuse things like that, it impacts on your relationship. It impairs your reasoning. You make unintelligible choices, unintelligible decisions as a result of you abusing substances such as alcohol. So you need to be very careful. You need to be aware that these are vices that would seem very glamorous. When you watch that music video, maybe your favorite musicians, you can't watch a video without them having a bottle beside them, and then you're just looking for it. Let me guess what? These things are not even sweet in the first place, but you need to be aware of it. Drunkenness is a vice of teenagers, is a vice to be aware of. Is a vice. When you're drunk, you say rubbish. When you're drunk, you can't be trusted to make decisions. So you need to be careful of this. But again, I get it that people can argue that there is a reasonable way you can take alcohol. I don't think so. I think you should. If you're not going to, if you're going to take a little, why take it at all, right? But that's that. But then when it comes to drugs, when it comes to abuse of drugs, it's a no. I personally don't believe there is a reasonable way to it, because you're killing yourself, and it is one thing you can abuse that can change the course of your life. It can impair reasoning. It can affect how you use your gifts. You suddenly find out that you are addicted. So these are vices that are dangerous. These are vices that are deadly, and you need to be aware of it. Social media, TikTok, everywhere, you would see videos of people who make life seem glamorous because of the substances they are abusing. I'm telling you, it is a facade. It's not real. Behind the scenes, people like this suffer consequences that they are ashamed of. It is sad to see images, videos of people who are suffering withdrawal symptoms just because for a minute, for an hour, they couldn't just have those drugs. You don't want to be in that space. There is nothing in life that should give you that type of experience where you can't take it for 10 minutes and you're not yourself. There are people who are drowning in debt because of substance abuse. And here is something I need to tell you, and something you'll not hear often from people like myself who try to, we are seen as the good guys who are trying to preach. We who propagate healthy masculinity, we are seen as simps, right? This is something that people like me don't usually say, and I'm going to tell you. The feeling you get from substance abuse can be heavenly. The first time you drag a smoke, the first time, if you ever allow yourself to get to that point where you take some sort of substance, I don't want to mention the name because I don't want to encourage you, the feeling can feel like the best feeling in the world. And that is where addiction comes in. Because guess what? What people will do is to tell you is that you would never get that feeling ever again. So if that feeling felt so good to you, the urge to want to get that feeling continues to grow. And because you can't attain it, you find yourself graduating, going from one level to one substance to the other until you find yourself addiction. There are some people who have been able to control it. They will tell you they know when to do it. They don't do it excessively. But that's a line I think is so broad that once you cross it, you never can tell the consequences upon your life, upon your relationships, that I will encourage you not to even go near. So drug abuse, substance abuse is a vice you need to be aware of as a teenager in this season. So that's that. Another vice is the one I call financial vices. Financial vices. And this one, because you are intrigued by the admiration of people. If you define admiration from a toxic point of view through things like you own, how you dress, you don't define admiration from healthy qualities like the fact that you are composed, the fact that you are emotionally intelligent. If you define admiration, if you define masculinity only by the fact that by the amount you have in your pocket, you might fall into this vice. It is greed that fuels this type of vices. Suddenly you find out that you are now addicted to betting. The idea that you can put in little and gain a lot, that's a vice. As a young boy, yes, you want to let people know that you've got the capacity to afford whatever you like. And if you're not careful, that can drive you to things like gambling. That can drive you to the highest form of greed, which is stealing, where you think you deserve somebody else's property more than they do. A lot of young people have found themselves in schemes, in scams, that have made them become wanted at a very young age. So you need to be aware of this. Somebody might say, well, I just bet. I love sports so much. I just bet what I have. But I'm telling you that the psychology behind betting is fueled by greed. The idea that I only need to put this amount, let's say put £2, I'm going to get 1 million. It can be very addictive because it sells to you a lifestyle that you, so think about it right now. Maybe before you spend any money, you have to wait on your parents. But the fact that, or if I take what my parents give me and I place a bet and I get a double of that, that means I can afford double of what I should have afforded in a month. So you do that. But unfortunately, the way the betting was, the highest stake is always for the least chance. What has the least chance of happening is where you have the highest stake. You find out that you don't usually win. You don't usually win that high amount of money. So what you end up doing is, to sustain yourself, you go and borrow. And if unfortunately you borrow from loan sharks, they are on your neck. People who they prefer to kill you than for them to lose their money. These are situations you don't want to find yourself. These are situations I found people, and it is ugly. It's an ugly situation. So you need to be very careful. Financial vices is a thing. You don't want to be that person that is scamming people online. I know that if you're from, I don't want to mention regions, right? If you're from a part of the world where you are associated, I'm Nigerian. Sometimes you get to the airport and you find out that you are treated harshly. It is because of certain people have brought a very negative impression about us just because of financial vices. They are scammers online pretending to be what they are not. These are things you could easily fall prey to if you are not careful, and you need to be aware that the solution, the secret to avoid things like this is just to be content. Beware of financial vices, beware of greed, beware of stealing. Be content with what you have, because what you have does not define who you are. Things change. There are things I couldn't afford 5 years ago. You see, my wife and I would always talk about how there are certain things we buy now, there are certain things we use now that we would just pause for a moment and just talk about how many years ago these things felt like luxury. These things felt like we grew up separately, but we shared so much similar backgrounds that it felt like there were people who used them were extraordinary people, but suddenly they are in our hands. What am I telling you? That seasons change, and that thing you think you cannot afford now, you might be able to afford it later, but I would rather you afford it out of integrity. You afford it with a sane mind than for you to afford it maybe because you cheated people or because you are now an addict to things like gambling. People lose their relationship, lose their family. People stake their children's life, stake the future of their family because they are addicted to things like gambling and betting. And you need to avoid it now that you are young. So be aware of that. The final vice I'll talk about before I end is sexual vices. Sexual vices, you see, this is the biggest lie that the secular world is telling to teenagers. You see, when I was going to start this series, I worried that I was talking about this type of vices to people I call teenagers, who ideally would be between the ages of 13 to 19. And I was concerned that, can I be saying these things to teenagers, until I heard about a certain movie where the people are on the movies you watch now. If you watch all these high school movies, the kind of things teenagers are doing, oh my God. So it just made me realize that this is not an improper conversation to have with teenagers. So sexual vices are things that teenagers are now being exposed to. You are being told that as long as you have of age to begin to identify those tendencies, you might as well explore them. It is becoming normal for movies, for Hollywood, for whatever, to show us movies of teenagers claiming to be in love and doing what adults should be doing. I talked about this last week, that having sex comes with consequences. So you need to be aware of this. You need to be aware of sexual vices like masturbation. You need to be aware of it. They seem pleasurable. That's the problem with vices. There is initial pleasure, which I'm telling you, it is very true. They come with pleasure, but if you're not careful and you get addicted, this can be very dangerous. They can destroy your relationship. They can be embarrassing. You'd realize that you're at work, you can't concentrate until you find yourself in the toilet doing things that are very embarrassing. So you need to be careful about them. Don't let the world we live in sell a lie to you. Don't let them tell you or concoct to you things through science and tell you it is normal. Well, as long as you're not doing it with anybody, you don't stand the risk of getting anybody pregnant. I'm telling you, vices like masturbation are destructive. There are people my age, there are people who are old enough, who have partners, but still find themselves addicted to this type of habit. And I'm telling you, it is better not to start than to find out that it is difficult to break. It is better not to start than for you to find out that it is difficult to break. This is what vices are, and you need to be aware of that. I might have missed anyone. It's not possible to cover them, but in my opinion, I think these are vices you should be aware of as a teenager. Appearance abuse, I said that one is light. I said that lightly. You could dress however you like, but I put in my caution there. Substance abuse, this is a no. Financial vices, be careful. And then sexual vices, be careful as well. I hope this helped you. And I'll see you on the next episode. Feel free to drop your comment. Feel free to drop your questions. Share with a teenager. Share with a friend. And I'm going to see you on the next episode. Bye.